bonjour à tous, good morning everyone. L'honorable François-Philippe Champagne, ministre de l'Innovation, des Sciences et de l'Industrie du Canada. Madame Christine Fréchette, ministre de l'Économie, de l'Innovation et de l'Énergie du Québec. Monsieur Pierre Fitzgibbon, ancien ministre de l'Économie, de l'Innovation et de l'Énergie du Québec. Professeur du prix Nobel de physique, M. Stephen Chu. Professeur du prix Nobel de chimie, M. Stanley Cunningham. Chers panélistes, chers participants, chers amis. Dear panelists, dear participants, dear friends, I am very pleased to welcome you to Montreal, Quebec for the 15th edition of International Conference on Advanced Lithium Batteries for Automotive Applications. Special thanks to our sponsors and all volunteers and all the people that are helping us. Thanks to all of your effort. Montreal will be the coming year the international capitals for sharp-level battery research and innovation and installation in the world. Next year we will host ABAA-15, the conference dedicated to last research advanced in the field of olivine-like iron phosphate. We also host the 27th annual conference of Electrochemical Society here in Concordia. And in 2026, we will happy to host the 23rd edition of the International Lithium Battery in the conference. Madame la Ministre Fichette, before to invite you to join the stage for a introduction speech, I would like to take a minute to remember 4 names, great scientific. They did a lot for battery that they passed away recently. Professor John Goodenough from the University of Texas, Ralph Broad in United Carbide and Violence, Chris Dayers from Bell Labs and Lightning Energy, and Andrea Hidnash from Mercedes-Benz. Madame la Ministre, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Saguib. Au département de chimie des matériaux à l'Université Concordia et surtout président de la 15e conférence internationale sur la batterie au lithium avancée pour les applications automobiles. Un grand merci pour votre mot d'introduction et pour votre invitation également. J'aimerais saluer Mme Sarah Sajedi, présidente directrice générale de AI Mobile et ERA Environmental et vice-présidente de la 15e conférence internationale. Également, j'aimerais saluer M. François-Philippe Champagne, ministre de l'Innovation, des Sciences et de l'Industrie. Mes salutations, chers collègues, qui se démarque toujours par son grand activisme et son énergie et sa détermination à nous tirer de l'avant. Mes salutations également à Dr. Stephen Chu et à Dr. Cunningham. Merci d'être des nôtres. Mes salutations également à mon prédécesseur, Pierre Fitzgibbon. Merci Pierre pour tout le travail accompli au cours des dernières années. Je pense qu'on en voit notamment ici le résultat et la collaboration que vous avez eue avec le milieu universitaire et également le milieu entrepreneurial et industriel. Donc un grand merci d'être là et pour tout le travail accompli. Alors, distingués invités, je suis très heureuse d'être avec vous aujourd'hui pour cette 15e conférence internationale sur les batteries de lithium avancées pour les applications automobiles. It is an honor to be hosting this major event here in Montreal. Et c'est d'autant plus pertinent que notre gouvernement est en train en fait de mettre en place la filière batterie qui est un véritable vecteur de développement économique au Québec. Et c'est inspirant de voir autant de dirigeants, de constructeurs automobiles, de fabricants de batteries, de scientifiques réunis ensemble pour façonner l'avenir de la mobilité durable. With the energy transition and the electrification of transport, demand for lithium-ion batteries will continue to grow over the next few years. And Quebec has everything it takes to be a leader in the energy transition and the green economy. We have one of the greenest electricity grid in the world, and thanks to scientists like Karim Zaghib, we also have expertise in a dynamic and innovative ecosystem. Quebec also has decade-critical minerals needed to produce batteries such as lithium, nickel, and graphite. Our strategy is simple but ambitious. We want to build an end-to-end, fully integrated ecosystem. We want to extract and process our critical minerals to build batteries and electric vehicles here in Quebec. Et notre gouvernement a attiré déjà plusieurs donneurs d'ordre dans ce grand projet de filière batterie. Plusieurs d'entre vous sont d'ailleurs parmi nous aujourd'hui. Merci de votre présence. Et on continue d'ailleurs à attirer d'autres acteurs clés dans cette chaîne de valeur, avec par exemple Nouveau Monde Graphite et également Nemaska Lithium. On aura des mines et des usines de raffinage de minerais. Avec EcoPro, Ultium Cam, Northvolt, Volta, on aura des usines de fabrication de composants et de cellules de batterie. Et les cellules vont ensuite être assemblées en blocs batterie pour être notamment installés à bord de véhicules électriques québécois par des entreprises comme Novabus pour les autobus urbains ou encore par Ambulance de Metz pour les ambulances électriques. Et on a des matériaux avancés, matériaux avancés Mireille pour faire le broyage de matériaux de cathode, de même que Lithium Technologies, une entreprise québécoise pour revaloriser les batteries en fin de vie. Just last Friday, I visited Lithium Technology, a specialist in battery recycling. Lithium has just entered into a major partnership with Hyundai to recycle the car maker's lithium-ion batteries across all of Canada. And we are making progress at every stage of the value chain to create an integrated ecosystem. The future lies in the energy transition and the circular economy. And what we are creating in Quebec is simply exceptional. Je réitère d'ailleurs mes remerciements à ce sujet à M. Fitzgibbon pour tout le travail accompli. Jusqu'à présent, notre gouvernement a annoncé pour plus de 16 milliards de dollars d'investissement dans cette filière. Et il y en aura encore plus. Notre projet prend de plus en plus forme et au final, on va pouvoir fabriquer au Québec la batterie la plus verte au monde. Et vraiment, on peut être très très fiers de ça. Just to make sure everyone understands that, Quebec will manufacture the cleanest battery in the world. Quebec has everything it takes to become one of the world's battery hubs. Et je vous ai parlé de nos minéraux critiques et stratégiques, mais je tiens aussi à rappeler que notre électricité est verte, composée à 99,9% de sources renouvelables. Et que dire de notre expertise et des talents, de notre capacité à innover? Dès les années 70, en fait, nos pionniers ont commencé à mener des recherches sur les batteries lithium-ion. Depuis, d'énormes progrès ont été réalisés, mais on détient maintenant plus de 850 brevets au Québec en matière de recherche liée aux batteries. Grâce au travail de nos chercheurs et nos experts de renom, le Québec est à l'avant-garde en matière d'innovation dans la filière batterie. Je salue notamment tout le travail, l'immense travail du professeur Zaguib. Merci, vraiment. Mes hommages pour vos succès, nombreuses réussites. Vous nous tirez de l'avant. Et d'ailleurs, je vous invite à prolonger votre visite également au Québec pour aller faire un tour là où se trouvent de très nombreux talents, c'est-à-dire à Bécancour, où l'on retrouve la plupart des entreprises de la filière batterie. Bécancour has become the heart of the battery industry in Quebec, and we are hearing about it as far away as Korea. If I had one piece of advice for your stay in Quebec, it would be this: visit Bécancour. It takes less than 2 hours by car. The energy transition concerns us all, and thanks to your research and action, we are moving forward in this necessary energy transition, and you can be proud of it. I encourage you to rely on Quebec expertise and talent to achieve your ambitions, because the battery sector is particularly happening in Quebec. Je vous encourage à miser sur l'expertise et le talent du Québec pour réaliser vos projets d'avenir liés à la filière batterie et à l'électrification des transports, parce que la filière batterie, c'est particulièrement ici que ça se passe. On a d'excellentes équipes chez Investissement Québec, tout comme dans mon ministère, le ministère de l'Économie, de l'Innovation et de l'Énergie, et tout le monde est prêt à discuter avec vous. Tout comme mon gouvernement, je demeure également très disponible pour vous écouter, pour échanger avec vous et pour vous appuyer pour la suite des choses. Sur ce, je vous souhaite une excellente conférence. Merci.
So, after the panel, because of the time issue, I invite Dr. Khalil, he's the founder and the IPA, to give a welcome address after the panel. So, and then I invited my colleague and my collaborator, Aphrodite, to chair the panel. So please enjoy this very interesting panel to see about the battery here. So we have experienced persons here. So Aphrodite.
Thank you, Kareem, thank you. My name is Aphrodite Salas. I am here on behalf of Voltage at Concordia University. I am the Dean 3 co-leader, the humanities side of things when it comes to electrifying society. So it's my pleasure to be here with you to moderate and serve as the panel MC for this distinguished keynote event. So joining me on stage is the Honourable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry of Canada. Next we have Pierre Fitzgibbon, the former Minister of Economy and Innovation of Quebec. Stephen Chu, Nobel Prize for Physics Professor at Stanford University and former U.S. Secretary of Energy under President Barack Obama. And Brian Cunningham, Program Manager at the U.S. Department of Energy. Welcome. Et une remarque à l'intention de nos panélistes, comme nous nous trouvons dans la belle province du Québec, la conversation se déroula dans la langue de votre choix, l'anglais ou le français, bien entendu. Donc, commençons par l'honorable François-Philippe Champagne. Ma question, quels sont les plus grands défis liés aux batteries et aux véhicules électriques au Québec et au Canada?
D'abord, bonjour tout le monde. Welcome everyone. I hope you appreciate. We make sure that there's snow would come later than after the conference, so you didn't have enough. We didn't have snow this morning, but big round of applause to Karim. Where's Karim again? I think he deserves a big round of applause for bringing everyone in Montreal, making sure that everyone talks about what we do here. So Karim, as everyone would say here, you're kind of the leader, and we're delighted to have you, and we're delighted that we can host that in Montreal and Quebec and Canada. Mr. Secretary, good to have you in Canada. Come anytime. We love you. So you're welcome to come north anytime. Our friend from the Department of Energy, thank you. And I know Secretary Granholm also is a big fan of what we do here. Et puis mon ami Pierre Fitzgibbon. Vous savez, c'est la première fois que je suis avec Pierre Fitzgibbon sur un panel depuis que Pierre a décidé de voguer vers de nouvelles fonctions. So, I know that I'm not supposed to take the whole 57 minutes, but I just want to say welcome to everyone. I think the biggest challenge we have is the cost. I mean, we all know that the cost of battery is about 40% of the cost of an electric vehicle. But what I would say, Canada stands out. I mean, I'm sure you have seen that Bloomberg now ranked Canada first, ahead of China. And this is before I give them an interview, when it comes to the battery ecosystem for the next 30 years in terms of sustainability. So I think we have a lot of things going on for us. I would say the first one is around talent. And I want to say thank you to Karim to have been the father and make sure we attract the talent to make sure that Canada and Quebec, in this case, would be standing out in the world. I think we have been successful with my friend Pierre and a couple of others to build the most complete ecosystem on battery. I'm still trying to look. If you took China and perhaps Korea, we're probably from copper foil to magnet to everything in between that we would need, including obviously the critical minerals to manufacture battery in North America. We have been blessed by critical minerals. I always remind my friend down south, Mr. Secretary, that about 2/3 of the list of critical minerals of the U.S. is in Canada. I just always remind my friend down south that we are bound to do that together. And I remember in my first conversation with Secretary Rondo, I said, Madam Secretary, you may know or not that there's only one refinery of cobalt in all of North America. She kind of looked at me and said, really? Look at the staff, and he once nodded and said, he's right. And she said, I guess you're going to tell me where. I said, you bet. It's in Cobalt, Ontario. And everyone looked down, and I said, Madam Secretary, it took 10 years to permit. So, if you want to build a new one, it's going to take at least 15, if you include lawsuits and everything. So I said, the right thing we should do between our two nations would be scaling up. We don't need to replicate, we need to scale. Speed and scale is everything. The fourth thing I would say is renewable energy. I think that everyone, if you look at the world today, decarbonization, digitization, so obviously Quebec stands out as 100% of renewable energy. And lastly is access to market, which is key because obviously when you think about the North American market, we have unparalleled market access. And when it comes to critical minerals, and I'll stop there, folks would tell me, Minister, there's critical minerals elsewhere. But I would say proximity. When I talk to the CEO of Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, Ford, Stellantis, GM, proximities to resources, market, and assembly line. And in that sense, you could say Canada has been either by luck or design, but we've attracted the largest single investment in Honda's history. 75 years of history of Honda, $19 billion that they're going to be putting in Canada. We've attracted the largest gigafactory of Volkswagen outside of Germany. Stellantis is now operating one of the largest cell manufacturing facilities in North America. And in Quebec, I would say I'm very proud that we have Northvolt on our shore. And Paolo is with us this morning, and I remain confident that my friends in Europe, everyone that I talk to in Europe, we need a European battery manufacturer, and I believe Northvolt is the answer. So with that, merci tout le monde, bienvenue, on est content de vous avoir, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne. You mentioned the ecosystem and the importance of a strong ecosystem for the production of batteries, and this actually goes straight to my next question for Pierre Fitzgibbon. As a former Minister of Innovation, Economy and Energy, you really played a key role in developing one of the most efficient battery ecosystems from mining to recycling, particularly in the Bécancour area that Minister Frechette had just mentioned to everybody. A small plug to have everybody do that 2-hour drive and check it out when you have a moment. Mr. Fitzgibbon, how did you build this ecosystem for the production of green batteries?
Well, hi everyone to start. And, it's been the last 6 years following François-Philippe Champagne. It's been not always easy to follow with all the points. Merci Mme Fréchette de me remplacer très élogieusement. Il fait un très beau travail à date. Et merci aux panélistes ici de pouvoir participer à cette session. Un merci particulier à Karim, évidemment. Je pense que François-Philippe l'a bien expliqué. Karim est le père de la filière EV batterie au Québec en 2019 pour commencer. C'est avec Karim que j'ai appris la plupart des choses que je connais aujourd'hui. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here and address you all. I guess it was a teamwork between Quebec and Ottawa. Looking at Quebec, I represented the government elected in 2018. So in 2019, we kind of look at how we can develop Quebec's competitive advantage to benefit of our economic development. And basically anchored ourselves to, at the time, Michael Porter's supercluster concept in the 80s, and we look at where were the advantages and realized that one of the segments was likely to be the EV battery because we had three clear assets. The first one, we had low-cost green energy, thanks to Quebec, thanks to wind power mills and other renewable projects to come. We also had, obviously, the critical minerals. We pretty much have everything except cobalt. We go from lithium, graphite, nickel, phosphate, which will be copper at one point. And lastly, but not the least, we have the universities. We have 18 universities in Quebec and a lot of research centers. Karim was at the time the head of Quebec IREC, which is the research center that clearly gave an anchor to all these IP and the research that was done in the battery file. So looking at this and looking at the clusterization of the EV, obviously Asia being the key focus, then Europe building its ecosystem, became clear that North America, from a circular economic perspective, I guess, we felt that there should be a cluster here in North America. Looking at the competitive advantage, why not Quebec being at the center of one of the cluster within the North American ecosystem? Quebec had not been part of the automotive industry. You have to be my age, you remember we used to make Camaros in the GM in the late 90s, but we kind of departed from that industry a while back while focused on the aerospace. So it was a way for us to return to that industry. We felt that it was probably going to be difficult to build cars, but we felt that so it was a three-pronged strategy. The first one was from the mine to the cell. The other one is to produce commercial vehicles, which we do school buses, electric school buses. We do one in Canada. We do urban buses. We do coach. So we felt let's go with the commercial EV, and we'll leave Ontario with the consumer cars. And lastly, recycling, because clearly to get this socially acceptable in the community, I think urban mining becomes important. And now we recycle resources will be very key to get the social acceptability we need in the future. So I agree with that, and to close on that, we decided to put a team together because the key for government is to have a cohesion of a team. So I set up a team within the ministry. At the time it was the Ministry of Economy, Innovation and Science. Put a team from the Ministry of Energy, which is a separate ministry. We put data in Quebec. This is one of the Quebec advantage. We have lots of offices around the world, and we have people focusing on foreign direct investment. We also had universities being part of it in Quebec, so we put a team together which was led by the ministry that we represented, and we kind of worked towards 5, I would say, pillars that was important. The first one was clearly to get the focus on the capital, because there was a race. Back in 2019, everybody's racing very, very fast about how we get this project off the ground, so we decided to put some money. We talked to the Prime Minister's office, let's allocate $1 or $2 billion project to be able to build the ecosystem, so that was an important part of it. The other one was out of central governments, where we had to get everybody focused, because I was then speaking with François-Philippe a lot about how we can anchor Canada and Quebec in terms of development of that cluster. So the Ministry of the Economy became the center focus point. We also had to look at the upstream. I believe that we believe at the time that it was important because Quebec was known to take our minerals, export it, and get the value added done somewhere else. And this was the first time we were able to get the supply chain in the longer we could. And on that, it became important to get the cell manufacturing. And we knew, given the energy constraint that we had, and we didn't have 2 or 3 cell manufacturing, so we look at different opportunities. And we're going to see and hear Paulo later, but Northvolt became our selection, and a good selection. So to have cell manufacturing here in Quebec allowed us to really claim that we can build from the mine to the cell, eventually the battery pack and get to the car. So, and the last point we had to focus on was to really get the business condition favorable for foreign investors to come into Quebec. But the least of which is labor. Access to labor becomes very important, technical labor. And that's why, because of the university, because of the trade school that we have, we're building right now, let's talk about labor, because we're building an ecosystem where the labor force can nourish these different projects that we have throughout Quebec. Environmental rules are very important to be clear, of course. A lot of pushback from environmentalists about how we're going to be building these projects. And it's very important to have clear rules to advance what they are getting into. And clearly the R&D is important too, to have an ecosystem where the government is supporting applied research, supporting the ecosystem of startups that can emerge out of that. Because eventually, as we put the startups, as we put the knowledge-based institutions at universities, the large corporations, the SMEs, that cluster, we'll go back to Michael Porter, that cluster performs. Then you got the legacy, you got sustainability there for the next few generations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fitzgibbon. Thinking of all of the ecosystem and the development of a real environment that will stimulate battery innovation, turning to Mr. Cunningham, if you can share with us how your programs are stimulating this to create electric vehicles in the United States.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. First, I'd just like to thank the audience for being here. Thank the organizers for setting everything up and actually inviting me to be a part of this prestigious panel. It's an honor to be here. Funny story. I was talking to my wife about this trip and telling her what I would be doing and who I would be speaking with. And she kind of just looked at me and was like, wait, who are you speaking with? And I was like, I know. She's like, the did they make a mistake? I was like, I hope not. But to be serious, as mentioned, I work for the Department of Energy, and within the Department of Energy, there are a lot of groups that do energy storage research and battery research, all the way from the foundational, fundamental work, more to the applied areas. My office and my team, we try to apply that R&D towards battery development that's going to enable a large market penetration of electric drive vehicles. And as kind of mentioned earlier, the best way that we know how to do that is really to reduce the cost of these systems. Everything within our portfolio is trying to drive down that cost and improve the performance of these batteries so that the consumer is having the same performance that they're used to having with the internal combustion engine. So a few examples of what we're doing. Most of it is going to be advances in next generation chemistry. Recent highlights include work that we've done on the cathode, trying to reduce critical materials from mixed metal oxide cathodes. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've gone from about 30% transition metals, cobalt, to just under 10. And in our research portfolio, right, we have material that performs just as well, if not better, with just 3% cobalt. So going forward, we'd like to change that, reduce the nickel a little bit more, and really focus on some R&D that increases the manganese content of those materials. Looking towards next generation phosphates, right? There's no critical materials in those chemistries, and there's been tremendous progress in terms of lowering the cost of that system through advancements at the pack and module level. So we're doing next generation R&D to increase the energy density at the chemistry level. Similarly, in terms of chemistry on the anode side, we are looking at replacing graphite, going to next generation materials such as silicon, whether that be in blended electrodes or 100% silicon. We've also made tremendous progress in this area, going from few hundred cycles now to 1,500 or 2,000 cycles with a silicon-based anode. Along with cycle life, calendar life has always been an issue for these types of materials. Basically, I'd say 10 years ago, calendar life of these systems only maybe a couple months, 6 months, and now all of a sudden we're up to 4 to 6 years. So still not ready for automotive use. So we're still looking at how can we improve that interface, how can we make it more stable, get it to that 10 to 15 year calendar life that would be necessary for the automobile. Staying with chemistry improvements, we also are looking at more longer term, high risk, high reward technologies, focusing on lithium metal, whether that be with traditional liquid electrolytes or solid state materials. When you go to the lithium metal anode, you have a lot more energy density, and it enables a whole suite of cathode materials that we can't do with graphite, those that are unlithiated. So conversion cathodes such as sulfur. Here, you get the best of both worlds. You have improved energy density, and you have earth-abundant materials. So if we can succeed in figuring out and overcoming the challenges that are inherent to these chemistries, we're going to have a system that is low cost and high energy, which is obviously what we're all trying to do. So other than chemistry improvements, we're also looking at investing in R&D on the manufacturing level, right? How can we improve manufacturing to lower the energy intensity as well as speed up the process, all of which ultimately reduces the cost of producing these materials. And then last but not least, a few of the panelists have mentioned recycling, right? If we are able to transition from a petroleum-based energy source, we want to make sure that we have a robust supply chain, one that is inherently circular, right? And so we're looking at not only improving the process of recycling, but also improving the chemistry behind all that. So it's a large portfolio, a lot of different things that we're doing, but it's a broad suite of solutions or hopefully challenges that we can overcome in order to hit the marks that we want to do. But again, driving down cost and improving performance. And hopefully if we're able to hit that, we can transition to this electrified future.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. It's true, the cost issue is a big one for consumers. The other two issues that we know of that consumers are really thinking about is people are worried about how fast they can get a charge and how far they can go on a charge. These are also big issues. So Dr. Chu, turning to you now. We know a lot of people are holding back from buying EVs because of these issues, cost, how far they can go, how fast that charge can happen. What's the best way, in your opinion, to address these challenges from a technological perspective, including when it comes to lithium-ion batteries and future lithium metal batteries?
Yes, well, I agree with you. You're absolutely right that many consumers want to mimic what they used to in an internal combustion engine car. Typically, you're 350, maybe 400 miles. You can fill it up in roughly 2 minutes, maybe 3 at the longest. And so they said, why can't I have that in my EV? Now, if you look at what is possible in EV, one has to also remind, so what's happening if you really want to charge fast, all the resistance that appeared in the movement of this charge actually become very important. Heat is generated, and you've got a real problem. Totally different than sloshing liquid or gas into a tank. There is no this internal friction. So the question is, can you ever get there? And I would argue that you might not need to get all the way to internal combustion engine charging rates. If you consider, when you're driving long distances, will you drive more than 2, 3, maybe 4 hours if you're younger, and then without a rest stop? You shouldn't really be driving 4 hours without a rest stop. And so consider a charging rate that is getting close. The standard used to be C/3 charges an hour. They're getting to 1C, 1 charge an hour, but creeping up on 3C. And suppose that you can pull up to a charging station and in, let's say, 6 minutes, you can go 200 miles. So what has happened around that time? That means you've driven 200 miles, you need a rest stop, you want a few minutes to charge your battery, so while you're discharging in a restroom, your car is charging, and if it takes about the same time, it's okay. So you don't really have to do the 400 miles in 3 minutes. I think 200, even 150 miles in 5 minutes is sufficient. Another dark secret I learned when I was an advisory board for Royal Dutch Shell. Royal Dutch Shell is vertically integrated in the sense that they operate their own gasoline stations, and they said, we don't make any money selling gasoline, even their V-powered, pretty expensive stuff. They said, we make all our money selling soda and food and candy and all this other stuff. And so we want the customers to actually be there for about 5 minutes. And so 5 minutes is the ideal time where they're not getting annoyed. If it's too long, they're blocking other pumps. If it's too short, they're not buying enough stuff. So there's some optimum that their actuarial guys, I'm sure, are working on. But it's of that scale, 3, 4, 5 minutes. You wash your windshield wiper in 1 minute or 1.5 minutes, and that's not good enough because you need to kill more time. So if you can achieve, and so this looks very feasible because when you charge in the sweet spot between 25 and 75%, you can charge very rapidly. The other thing, and this is happening, of course, when you're charging, you've got to turn on any possible cooling mechanism you have in the car. Very exotic things people are now thinking of when they're going to 350 and 500 kilowatt chargers, that they're going to go to liquid cooling, which means you've got to standardize the battery so that when you hook up your electrical conduction, can you hook up something that actually hooks up to the battery pack and it's cooling it far faster than what's designed for normal use. So these are things that will happen, but ultimately it's going to be essentially chemistry. And chemistry of interfaces, because it's those chemistry and the chemistry of interfaces which cause the resistance. But again, as long as the battery lasts longer than the human bladder, then you've won the game, if the cost is the same. Because at that point, because everything else about the electric vehicle, like the maintenance, the energy you need to drive, is going to be much less in the future. And then there's one final thing, and I don't know how this is going to work out, and that is, as sunny countries, maybe not so much Canada, but in the US we have lots of solar, and in California we have considerable solar. In a typical summer day, we're talking about 60% is coming from solar. And because of that, there's a surplus now of electricity. And it's getting to a point during noon times, you're actually going to either throw the energy away or store them in a battery or something. If you can get real-time pricing, because at these times the price actually goes negative, you're going to have to pay someone to take it from you. So if you can, I can imagine a time when kind of at lunchtime, and you have fast charge, 5 minutes, you go there and you charge your car on nothing, 1 cent a kilowatt hour or less. And now, if you had enough charges, and this I don't see, you can sell it back to the city at 5 o'clock. So, it's always what I wanted to do, buy low, sell high. So far my investment strategy has been the opposite. I buy high to sell low. But there's a possible role for EVs to be doing this arbitrage, but that has some technical things that I don't, because they have to be hooked up during that time. But just charging for 5 minutes in the middle of the day seems to be something, a lunchtime break, you get your car charged. The question is how many chargers, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that in my talk.
Well, that really opens things up. Buy low, sell high. Buy high, sell low. I'm like thinking of all the different issues that come to mind, especially now in terms of a stable and sustainable battery supply chain using our critical minerals. This is a question for any of the panelists. How do we go about building something like that? Something truly stable and sustainable.
Well, again, but after I heard from the Nobel Peace Prize, the physics of charging and discharging, I'd rather let you go first, Mr. Secretary, right? But I need to just say 1 or 2 words. By the way, on the cobalt story that I said, the Department of Defense just invested $30 million in the company, so they saw the link between the two. And you're so right, Mr. Secretary, that now the newest charging station that I've seen, they now have a kind of a living room. To your point about how much time to charge and discharge, those which have the, Circle K and 7-Eleven, which, as you know, the owner is a Canadian from Montreal. But in fact, now if you go to those very fast ones, they have like a living room space. They opened one in my district, that's why I know them well, because I went to visit. And it's funny that the way they did that, it's now a place where you can. Initially, you were buying maybe a soda and chips, but now they're offering pizza and other things that people could stay longer. So looking at the time people could stay. So that's very interesting. No, I think for me, we've said that to our friends in the White House and at the National Security Council. In my view, I think that North America is in a place which is unique in the sense we have everything to be at the forefront of the EV revolution. I think it started with the IRA, and I think President Biden did an amazing service to North America in reshoring, friendshoring all the investment we've seen. We were not using to make batteries, let's be honest. This was made in China and Korea and Japan. But now with the investments you've seen on both sides of the border, it's quite astonishing. When it comes to critical minerals, we have everything. And Mr. Cunningham, you belong fully on this panel because you're the future. And what you said, I think that what we've said to our friends at the Department of Energy is how we can better match the demand, the offer and demand. In a sense, we have everything, but I think the market is not functioning properly. We have a number of small and medium-sized mining operation here, even refinery. But what we need now is speed and scale. I mean, the elephant in the room is to reduce the cost of the battery. Now what we need is speed and scale. Now, delighted to see some of the big players coming in Canada, and I would say in the United States, to make sure that we would have more scale and the capital to invest, because these are billion-dollar investments. You have seen Rio Tinto recently just announced its largest acquisition since they bought Alcan, actually, I think about $7 billion. In terms of the some of the lithium investments in Canada. What we've been trying to say, and we said that also to European friends and even NATO friends, is that if we on one end could match the demand, we could figure out the financing, and the offer is there because we have the critical minerals. And I think, let's be honest, there are some which have been trying to artificially diminish the price of some of these commodities. So we need to have a better trading system. And I think if we match the offer and the demand, we will be able to lead in that. And for me, this is all about possibilities and opportunities. There's been so much investment in North America that, you know, from our end, we started downstream in a way. We started basically with the customers. And now the customers are trying to backfill the upstream. That was our strategy with Pierre, and I think it worked pretty well if you compare. When I started as Minister of Industry, and I'll stop there, believe it or not, Mr. Secretary, you'll feel for me on that. The first briefing I got, they said you'll preside over the end of the auto sector in Canada and the loss of 500,000 jobs. I said, I'd rather not be the one, so let's turn the challenge into an opportunity. And now today, with what you've done in the US and what we've done, we've completely turned that around, and I think the opportunities that people see in North America are quite unique, because that's the largest. I mean, you say China for China, that's the largest of the market, and that's why you've seen Korean firms, Japanese firms, European firms coming here to make sure we develop the market, which is, in my view, that's a real game changer. And the fact that we have adjustments short term, I always say, this not took 17 years to be profitable. When you've been doing the same thing for 100 years and you change for the next 100, yeah, you have market adjustment, you have consumer adjustment. I think that Secretary Chu mentioned some of that. But over the long term, our North Star is electrification. And I'm convinced that we have, I mean, there's no region in the world which has the full value chain and the critical mineral to lead. And we have the brain is in the room. So with the brain, the critical mineral in the market, I think we are on the verge of a major success for generations to come.
Yeah, I'd add to that I think the social issue are very, very important. My comment would be Quebec-centric, but we have the privilege here to have pretty much all the minerals that are required. We've got the iron, we've got the phosphate, which will be good with FE, we've got lithium, we've got graphite, we have nickel. But they're all on the north of the 49 parallel. They're all in the rural region where we need to deal with the social acceptability. That's a very, very important aspect right now with both the First Nations that we have to deal with, and also the municipalities. And I remember I spent a lot of time with the First Nation over the last few years, and there's so many projects, mining projects. It happens to be where there's wind generation possibility, hydro dams that we need to kind of refurbish. So we need to really be cohesive, and we need to be socially friendly about how we build these projects. And I think that we need to do a better work to explain the benefit that these projects will bring to the community. As I said earlier, the first time I spoke, it used to be a time where in Quebec we would extract our minerals, our resources, and export them. And the value add, the transformation would be done outside Quebec. So now what we do to get to social acceptability is we have to be diligent as to how we build these projects. We need to be environmentally friendly, to respect the environment as ways to do this. Social acceptability is not unanimous. Instead, no project will be unanimous to the community, but we need to make sure that there's proper information being given. And I think that also we need to think about the region, how we can bring the value, the added value in the region. So more and more we're going to see, for example, Advanced Lithium. We have projects right now looking at making carbonate of lithium or hydroxide of lithium in the regions. Because even within Quebec, if we take the resources north, we bring them to Montreal, they become cool. Some people say, well, you don't have that benefit. Some people are very regionalized. Quebec is very diversified geographically. So I think social acceptability is very, very, very important. And we have spent a lot of time on that. Otherwise, if there's too much setback from the community, these projects are really difficult to make. The other element, which is very important, is the talent. I talked about that earlier. We need to make sure that the trade schools, we need to make sure that we have recognition that we need to train our young people to be involved in these files, because those who will want to exploit the mine, do the first, second transformation, to do that capital cell eventually, needs to be an ecosystem of education and training of our people. That is essential for the sustainability of the supply chain. We need clearly I mentioned that earlier, the clear environmental rule. In Quebec, we have called it BAT, we have to go through a process. It's not a tribunal, but we need to be, companies need to understand clearly what that means so we can have a pathway for success. I think we need to also talk about the ownership. It's very sensitive here in Quebec about who owns the mine, who owns the project. So I think we've demonstrated that we can work with foreign investors. Sometimes we need foreign talent for us to build these ecosystems, and it needs to be Quebec ownership in there so we can have a mutual benefit. I think that is something that we've been working hard. I think it's important to get foreign ownership, especially in the U.S. I think the U.S. looking at Canada has a lot of resources, and we need to make a good partnership, which I think is going to be ensuring the sustainability of our ecosystem.
Yes, Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, so definitely outside my wheelhouse as a program manager for R&D. But in my mind, right, until cost is lower, there has to be policy put in place to set up the supply chain, to set up the ecosystem. And I think it's up to the government to set that policy, right? Government sets the policy, it lets the industry know where government wants to go, and then they can start funneling money into that area. So in the U.S., there's been a tremendous amount of policy put in place over the last couple of years through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act that has done an excellent job of establishing policy to set up this supply chain, right? I think for the first time in our history, in at least the EV space and battery space, we're doing policy that does both supply side and demand side, right? So through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Department of Energy is in charge of over $6 billion in grants that's going to be used to develop infrastructure, setting up these plants. I think to date we're about 80% of the way there. We've funded projects to set up facilities to build electric vehicle batteries on the cathode side, both LFP as well as NMC type cathodes on the anode side, natural and synthetic graphite as well as silicon facilities. And we've even gone through and done stuff on the recycling side. So $6 billion there, another $2 billion in terms of conversion grants that are going to basically transform facilities making internal combustion engine vehicles to producing either hybrid or plug-in hybrid or all-electric vehicles. So $8 billion just there. Also on the supply side, tax credits, right? We have a program put in place to award $45 per kilowatt hour of tax credit, making EV cells, packs, and modules. So a lot of money going into developing that infrastructure, right? Sending a clear signal to industry that we are in this for the long haul and we are going to be a real player here. And then on the demand side, credits for the consumer, $7,500 for each vehicle. Obviously, there are some limitations there, but allowing the cost to be artificially driven lower in the near term to help set that demand up to actually take some of the supply offline while we build up and wait for, I guess, R&D or anything like that to lower the cost naturally. The U.S. government is also building out our nation's charging network to also bolster demand, right? The consumer wants this charging network so they don't fear to get stranded anywhere. So we're doing a lot there. So a lot of work on the policy side to improve the supply and demand economics that are in play. And it's working great. We talked about all the money that's going into the space from industry and private capital. Depending on where you look in the announcements, you can see, I mentioned $8 billion, which sounds like a lot, but industry is then pouring in $150 to $200 billion in North America, which is just a great leverage of taxpayer funding dollars and showing the direction that we need to go. And hopefully this continues. That $200 billion, from our analysis, isn't enough to get us to our goals for 2030, but hopefully the direction is there, and we've put forth the right market indicators that this is the way that we want to go. A really fantastic progress to date, but we still have a lot.
Absolutely.
I want to bring back, I think, to your original question, which is what I heard is that there are materials, and there are critical materials. And so how are you going to set this up so we have these supply of critical materials to make batteries? That was the original question. Great. So let me step back from even that question and say, okay, we know now that today's batteries, it's graphite, it's nickel, manganese, cobalt, already shifting to iron phosphate because nickel and cobalt are getting too expensive. I'm glad that Canada has all this good stuff, but there's another question, and that is it possible to get substitutes? I mean, the big crown jewel would be, make a metal battery with sulfur that has all the characteristics of the very best batteries we have today, and you say, okay, then the critical minerals are no longer there. In the realm of critical materials, as they try to work out less cobalt especially, and they found, from what I recall, is the lowest unit amount of cobalt, it just doesn't work as well. And you need that amount. And so immediately people will say, okay, I'm going to start a company to use machine learning to find out how I can better prospect for nickel and cobalt that are found together. So that's one way of doing it. But the other way of doing it is to say, in the end, it's a losing battle, because if it's not a shortage in the next 20 or 30 years, will it be a shortage in the next 50 or 60 years? And the way I think and what I want to work on now, I'm trying to solve a 50-year problem, not the 20-year problem. 20 years is finances and markets and things like that. And so I would always go to more exotic materials. There's a parallel situation with motors. Rare earths are needed in motors, the most efficient, most powerful magnets. And so instead of trying to lock up these cobalt plus rare earths for the motors, the other approach is, can you make a permanent magnet that is nearly as powerful as the best rare earth magnets, but without the rare earths? That even cobalt is cheaper than the rare earths. And so there's a whole bunch of people now doing machine learning, trying to look around. Is there, and there's actually some possible hits. There's actually a company that's been formed that said they have a cobalt iron magnet that's nearly as powerful as the rare earths. Okay, so when you do something like that, it totally upends the game. If we can get the magic sulfur lithium metal battery, the game will be over. In terms of lithium, lithium is about as abundant as chlorine in the Earth's crust. It's not that rare. It's that our mining of lithium is very, very polluted, and so that's a lot of what's been limiting. And to your point about First Nations, if the mining wasn't polluted, if the mining was just left the land pristine, it would be a totally different conversation. And so there again, people are beginning to think hard. Can you get salty water out of the ground, extract just the lithium, and pump the salty water back in the ground? Because if you pump it up into a lake, which is done today, a huge lake, and you evaporate all the yuck that comes, at the technical term that physicists use, that comes out of the ground, and all the heavy metal junk, the radioactivity, all that stuff is now exposed to the ground. You trumped up so much water that the fresh water above it sinks, and so you also depleted your freshwater supply. So it's really bad. If you can just extract it and pump it back down from briny water, and you just go anywhere deep, you always get briny water, it's a totally different thing. And already people are beginning to do that, and even companies are popping up to mine lithium in this way. Just extract the lithium, stick the rest back in. There is no mining sludge. So I would say in the solution to the challenges, if we don't want EVs to be here for the next 30 years, and we actually want them to be a more or less permanent transition until we get really good public transportation everywhere. You want that, and so the material problem, obviously, going on further, the one I worry about is copper. There's a lot of copper, but because of electrification, I see a copper shortage, and that one's harder. Because the substitute material for copper is there's aluminum as copper, aluminum for high transmission lines. And so, again, there's a dream. How much of all the stuff we have in the ground, most stuff we have in the ground turns out to be carbon in the form of coal, oil, gas, of just the stuff we use in everyday life around the world. You can turn some of that carbon into conducting with the conductivity per unit weight comparable to copper. You've got an unlimited supply of conductors. Again, so we have that, it's possible, but it's too expensive, way too expensive. And so again, it's better, I would challenge this to be completely out of the box and look at new materials as well as cleaning up the old mining procedures we do have. Even cleaning up rare earths in a modest way would go a long way in the refining of rare earths. That's the short term. Long term, find a substitute.
Actually, I find that brilliant, just to think about the problem in a different way, right? Instead of talking about how to engage and make something socially acceptable, actually think about changing the way you're doing it in order to make that acceptability almost automatic. That's brilliant. I just like the way that reframed things. It's also because at the beginning, Dr. Chi, you were saying, when we were talking about people having concerns about how fast they can get a charge or how far they can go, you said, but they'll never be like diesel. They'll never be like a gas car anyway. There's something in that, too, that I think is valuable in terms of getting people to understand that and then creating kind of the ecosystem to make that acceptable, right? In terms of startups and spin-offs, how can we really accelerate that as well to support existing companies and to find the kind of solutions that are out of the box to support our younger generation, including early career researchers, to really just change that mindset?
Can I just make one comment on the last thing? I do want to give people a feel for when you go to a gasoline pump. In the United States, we're limited to 10 gallons a minute. 10 gallons a minute of listed gasoline. You convert that to BTUs per minute. You convert that to watts, and you're putting in 22 megawatts. Okay, 22 megawatts in your 10-gallon gasoline pump. If you think about an airplane, fast fueling, or it's putting much more. And so, the very basic physics and chemistry of this, and you think, are batteries going to ever match this? And the answer is, I don't think so. even if you account for the efficiency of the motor, 90% efficient instead of 35% efficient. 22 megawatts, no heat, is astounding. And so I think that limitation, there are going to be other things, like much lower costs of operation, much lower cost of the fuel. And so a little inconvenience, a few more minutes, not 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. That's enough that it will overweigh all those other things. And so I think, you make the other things so much better. And if it's a little inconvenience, that gives an opportunity to sell more candy or beer or something. That's okay.
Yes.
Non, mais ce que j'aime du Dr. Chu, c'est ralentir pour aller plus loin. So slowing down to go further, I love that. Non, mais je pense que vous avez raison. Si je regarde ce qu'on a fait au Québec dans l'industrie de l'aérospatiale, c'est un peu ce que Pierre disait. Dans le fond, la grappe industrielle qu'on a basée ici à Montréal, vous savez, une fois qu'on a amené des joueurs importants, ensuite de ça, on a bâti un écosystème autour. Moi, je regarde, il y a peut-être 2-3 000 PME maintenant qui servent. Montréal est la seule ville au monde où on a Boeing, Airbus et Bombardier qui sont regroupés dans l'industrie. Alors, je donne un exemple dans le domaine des batteries, une compagnie qu'on voit souvent, c'est Xanadu. So, if you want to Google that, Google Xanadu. If you remember one thing of today, go see Xanadu. Every CEO in the world in the auto sector calls me to talk about Xanadu. So, Xanadu, c'est la seule compagnie au monde qui a un ordinateur quantique qui travaille sur la chimie des batteries. Alors, quand vous avez, je pense que c'est un peu l'intersection de la recherche et de la science, et je dirais même des startups, c'est que vous avez des compagnies comme Xanadu qui est à Toronto, qui s'est spécialisée justement dans l'optimisation des batteries. Et pourquoi je dis ça? C'est parce que, comme vous dites, le but d'avoir attiré avec Pierre, je pense à Norfolk, je pense à Ford, à GM, vous savez, quand on parle de Bécancourt à Tokyo, ça va bien. Mais l'idée, c'est de dire, ce qu'on voulait développer, ce qu'on a réussi à faire, c'est de faire entrer le Québec dans l'industrie automobile. Et ça, pour moi, c'est une grande réussite, parce que la dernière fois qu'on a fait entrer le Québec dans une industrie, c'était probablement dans le domaine de l'aérospatial. Mais ça, pour moi, comme vous dites, ce qui est important, c'est de bâtir l'écosystème, parce que, comme le Dr. Chou disait, on ne bâtit pas pour les 20-30 prochaines années. Ce qu'on a saisi au Québec, c'est une opportunité générationnelle. On parle pour les 100 prochaines années. But so what I was saying, just for folks who might be interested, Xanadu, it's one of those places where you go, all the guys and women all in t-shirt, black t-shirt. There are about 100, and they have the only quantum computer in the world dedicated to battery chemistry. So whoever you meet, when you talk about Xanadu, people say, because, you know, obviously what they do, in the words of one CEO of one of the largest automotive company in the world, he said, since I found Xanadu, I can save 2 years on R&D, so do I love them? I'd like to marry them. I would say this is about the kind of startup you need, and I think it goes from quantum to obviously the whole ecosystem, because we're building, as Dr. Chu said, in my view, the kind of new industry we're building is really a generational opportunity. Very rarely in your life you'll see something as big as we're saying. Probably the internet, probably AI, but certainly on the manufacturing side, the shift from combustion engine to electric vehicle. And I would say not only electric vehicle, but green vehicle. Because I think consumer, Dr. Chu, will want more than electric, they want green. And green for me is about green aluminum, green steel, it's about green batteries. I mean, there's a reason why we have all these people coming, at least I can say about here and those that we, you know, most of them we did cold calls, by the way. I'll put that in the book where I'll give you a free chapter. They were mostly cold calls where we said, if you want to build the greenest vehicle in the world, we need to do that together, because with renewable energy, I think consumer today, you may have seen even that the aluminum coming from Rio Tinto, just about 2 hours away from here, is the greenest aluminum in the world, and now is used by BMW and Spartanburg in their plant in the United States, and Audi just announced that. So in my view, we're seeing that revolution of decarbonization from the battery to the car and everything in between, and I think that's why I am very hopeful that the whole ecosystem will benefit from that for generations to come.
And maybe to piggyback on that, the role of the government, I think, on the startup is very important. If I look at Quebec, the energy transition becomes one of our important innovation zones. We are blessed to have Quebec, for example. We're blessed now to have large projects coming through. Now we talk about NMC and batteries. We'll be replacing something else later. So I think that the role of the government is to really incubate and to. We did a lot of funds to nurture the startups, because we have universities, we have applied research. Canadian is obviously a very important player there with Voltage, at Concordia with other university. So as a government official, an ex-government official, it's important to fuel the engine, so to speak, so startups will emerge out of these large corporations. François-Philippe talks about green aluminum. Well, we seeded with Alcoa and Rio Tinto a new technology to do inert anode, which will help the GHG issues. Same thing with green steel, where we have. So I think new technologies required. We conclude by saying that we want to decarbonize, we want to be net zero by 2050. Right now, technology does not probably exist to get there. So therefore, the only way we get there is for governments to see these new companies. And we have an anchor, a foundation, which is the whole EV we talked about today. So that's an anchor for us to make sure young entrepreneurs will emerge out of that and come up with new technology to the future of our society.
Yes.
Yeah, I love this question, and I hope that we do a good job of this already, right? There's a lot of different programs in the U.S. that help foster innovation, especially for small businesses. It's a tremendous job creation process. And when I started my career, I was managing our portfolio for what's called SBIR, Small Business and Innovative Research. So at the time, I'm 25, and I'm going to Boston to visit a company, and this is before smartphones really existed. And so I have an address, like printed directions of how to get to there, and then all of a sudden I'm in a neighborhood, and I get out of my car and I ring a doorbell to like a house, right? And a woman opens the door, and I'm a kid, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong place, I typed the address in wrong, and then you can hear somebody in the background, no, come on in. And so go upstairs to an attic that's like an office with this small business, right? There's a 3-person company, and we're having a business and like a meeting in this person's house. And that was, 2010, 2012. And over time, we were able to nurture that company. And just recently, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, they were just awarded $50, $100 million to develop a gigafactory in North Carolina. So there are programs in place. Obviously, all of these companies could use a lot more capital, but that's the role of our government, and that's the role of this innovative ecosystem, is to give the opportunity to these companies, because there's tons of great ideas out there within our portfolio, within the national lab system, within universities, and taking those, turning them into companies is exciting. It's a lot of fun. It's great to see that transition. It's really cool to have those types of stories to share with everybody. So hopefully we're doing this. We can always want to do more, but it's really fun.
The last word, Dr. Chu?
Well, very briefly, I think I'm a big fan of small business in the sense that they are the most innovative and they're hardest working. If you're in a small business and you're not working 8 hours, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But there's other forces at work here, and in the battery space especially, you've got these super big players. And what is emerging right now is there's an oversupply of batteries. And this is coming pretty quickly, just as the oversupply of silicon PV came on. And that's really hard in small businesses. And so there are two issues. When there's an oversupply, all the small people will disappear. The other thing has to do with the OEMs. The OEMs want a reliable supplier. And we're talking about this, Stanford colleagues and I were talking about this on the car ride over. The OEMs want a battery that they can put in their car and it can be reliable. A small business, it has to be a gigafactory, at least in order to supply an OEM. But is it possible to have battery specs well enough defined so that a battery from small company A versus big company B would be equally okay? Because right now the OEMs don't want little companies. They even Apple, for a supplier, they want one or two. They always want two. Two is magical because one, they get to charge what they want. But two, and that's about it. They want 2 suppliers. They don't want 50 suppliers, and some of them are small. And so there will always be a place for small businesses because they turn out to have some of the innovative stuff, and they can get bought by a big company. But to really see them nurture and grow into something which is even better is right now, in this particular time, it's a bad time to be starting a battery company. Maybe in a couple of years after the hump goes away.
Thank you. And on that note, did you have one last thing to say? That's all you know? Okay, great. I'd like to thank each and every one of you. Merci beaucoup for your time, your expertise, and for setting the tone for this extraordinary event. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.